A true and faithful relation of what passed for many years between Dr. John Dee and some spirits. And this is an example of the table of the Book of Enoch. He goes on. As for divine substances, which we honor, we can say but little of them, though we desire it, because so little of them is exposed to sense and reason. Mortal things that we are familiarly acquainted and daily converse with, we may know if we take pains, but much more should we rejoice in the knowledge, yea, though we know but a very little part of things divine for the excellency, than in the knowledge of these worldly things, though never so perfect and general, but the comfort that we have of them, which doth make some amends, is the certainty, and that they come within the compass of sciences. What could be said more divinely by a man that had nothing by revelation? Truly, there appeareth unto me, if I may speak without offense and misconstruction, more divinity in those words than in some books that pretend to nothing else. Add to this another place in his Metaphysics, where he saith that though things supernatural be of themselves clear and certain, yet to us they are not so, who see them only with owl's eyes. Can we say that then Aristotle denied those things that he forbore to write of? Because they were, their natures and their qualities, above the knowledge of man. Neither is it absolutely true that Aristotle never wrote of spirits and apparitions. Cicero, in his first book, De Divination, hath a long story of him, of a shape or spirit that appeared in a dream to one Eudemus, his familiar friend and acquaintance, and foretold him strange things that came to pass. Now, one of the things is that a person can cause themselves to have psychedelic experiences without drugs, or it can happen to a person. 65% of people are said to have some sort of spontaneous such experience in their life, without drug exposure or something. Now, to say this can happen scientifically on a regular basis, yes. Without even practice and experience, it should be obvious. But it's not that we can make ourselves have a spiritual experience that, that easy. Perhaps with a lot of psychedelic experience that is intentionally given, spiritual experience will be part of it. I see trippy lights and feel extraordinary emotion and sensation daily. Not randomly and destructively, but daily and nightly. So it's like, but experiencing the spiritual realities, that's, as much as I share some stuff on this channel, that's relatively infrequently by comparison. Clemens Alexandrinus Alexandrinas, yeah, okay, hath the strange story of him, of a magical ring, one or two, which Exextus, king of the I'm pursuing Phocensis or Phocensis. Does that mean king of the Phoenicians? Did use and foresaw things future by them. It is to be found and seen among the fragments of Aristotle's works, and that he did not deny, which may appear by that mention he makes of them in more than one place. How much he ascribed to common report and experience, no reason should be given, doth appear by his preface to the treatise de divination per infomnia, where he proposeth the case, how hard it is for a rational man to believe anything upon report which he can see no reason for, nay, which seemeth contrary to reason, as for a man to foretell by dream what shall happen in another kingdom far off, without any apparent cause. But on the other side, saith he, not left hard to deny that which all men, or most men, do believe, to wit, that there be such predictions. For to say, his own words, that such dreams come from God, beside what else might be objected. Well, there's three sources of dreams. Directly sanctioned by God source of dreams, the dreams of your own psychology, and the dreams of demons. So, and the dreams that God has specifically ordered doesn't necessarily make an entity, the sort of prophet that anybody would have to follow, which might easily be understood by them that understand his doctrine. It is most unreasonable to believe that God would send them to men, either vicious in their lives, or idiots and fools, of all men the most vile and contemptible, who has been observed to have such dreams oftener than better and wiser men. So leaving the business undetermined, he doth proceed to the consideration of those prophetic dreams, for which some probable reason may be given. Now, you figure out things in your sleep, and you can train yourself to be better than not, but prophetic isn't something other than, guessing the future, from its root of being spiritually gifted. That's obviously not something we're talking about. Yet in the second chapter, he saith directly that through dreams be not theop pa, yet they may perchance dai mania. Oh, and it has that 5-pointed star next to it. For such he acknowledges nature to be, not Thion, but daimonion. Only, I will not inquire further into the meaning of these words. It is not to be done in a few words. It plainly appears that nothing troubled him so much, for he repeats the objection twice or thrice, as that God should be thought to favor either wicked men or fools. Well, what about the story of Paul? How does the Christian reconcile that one? A murderous persecutor falls and gets hit on the head and goes blind for a few days and gets told things and interprets things to be something that maybe the persons talking to him weren't. There's certainly detail in the story that indicates that in each stage there could have been such issues. Latin interpreter translates it demonia, and I know not how it can be better expressed, though liable to ambiguity. And as time went on, the word demon, forget its etymological origin, it became something of, the bad side. Not, but this arrogance of, somebody's in a better intellectual or whatever position than they can have the experience. And if they're in a bad moral position, perhaps the experience can push them to the other side, right? It could be something that they need or is better for them to have than those who are pious and smart and all that. I wish no worse doctrine had ever been printed or preached concerning God, but still let it be remembered that he knew of no divine word or revelation, yet Julius Scaliger, in his commentaries upon Hippocrates de Infamniis, doth wonder that Aristotle should stick so much at this, and seems himself to give a reason grounded in nature. Indeed he saith somewhat as to the case of fools and idiots, but nothing that I remember that reaches to wicked men also. Let these things be considered, and let the reader judge of how different temper Aristotle was from that of ancient or later Epicurus. This mention of Aristotle and Plato puts me in mind of Socrates and of Socrates their master. His familiar spirit, no shape, but a voice only, by which his life and actions were much directed. The thing is attested by so many, so grave authors, were of some lived at the very time, others not long after, or in times not very remote, that I know not how it can be questioned by any man. Neither indeed is it that I remember by any heathens or Christians of ancient times. I mean, if you're going to the Greek and Latin roots of words like pagan and heathen, you're not talking about different types of religion. You're talking about, their material culture, like how their homes were, basically. And, the Romans didn't use it to say, the poor people in the countryside, sure, but it didn't matter whether they worshipped Apollo or whatever. It had nothing to do with it. And there have been books written of it, diverse in Greek and Latin, whereof some are yet extant, but whether it were a good spirit or an evil, some men have doubted, and it is free for any man to think what as he pleaseth of it. For my part, I ever had a reverent opinion of Socrates, and I do believe, if there be no impiety in it, as I hope not, that he was, as among the heathens in some respect, a forerunner of Christ. And that's, of course, one of the things that a lot of the Christians do. What's Paul's thing about the dark sayings? It's all occult secrets. Even if it condemns the Christian law of atonement, idea of atonement by its eightfold things, like tonic and some other things in tonic, refuting the idea of God having a son and all sorts of other stuff. Even original sin, and there's, but that's part of the Christian approach to comparative religion, as it would be called. Dispose them the better when the time should come to embrace and edit effectually the gospel. Many other philosophers that have been of greatest fame were certainly great magicians, such as Orpheus, Pythagoras, Empedocles, and the like. As by those things that have been written of them by several ancient authors may be collected, but above all I give the preeminence to Apollonius Theonius, a man of latter times, and of whom we may speak with more confidence and certainty, because he was contemporary with what they say Paul was. And 3 of the Gospels weren't even started until he was dead for 20 years. And the book of Acts also not started until 20 years after. And I don't remember when he was born, but he died around 100 of the Common Era. This was the man whom the ancient heathens, very tenacious of their former worship and superstitions, did pitch upon to oppose unto Christ. His life hath been written by diverse, 4 of them were joined together and opposed to the 4 Gospels, and Hierocles, a famous philosopher of those times, made a collation of his miracles with those of Christ's, who was answered by Eusebius, yet extant. Sure it is, they prevailed so much that he was for a long time worshipped by many, and in sundry places as a very god, yea, by some Roman emperors, as we find in history. Theodostratus hath written his life in very elegant style, as Photius judged, in 8 books, which are extant, and, though they contain many fabulous things as any man may expect by the undertaking, yet they have so much truth and variety of ancient learning, that I think that they deserve to be much better known than they commonly are, but cannot be understood, I am sure, as they should be by any translation, either Latin or French, that I ever saw, for the Paris edition, though it boasts of great things as the matter is, yet how little was performed may easily appear unto any that will take pains to compare it with the former edition of Aldus, which I speak not to find fault, because I, with that some able man would undertake the work, there is not any book, by the translations yet extant, that more needeth it. What use Scaliger made of him may appear by his frequent quotations in his notes upon Eusebius in the history of those times. As for Apollonius, his miracles are wonderful acts, which is our business here, though many things have been added, some probably done by imposture, yet I do not see how it can be doubted that but he did many strange things by the help of spirits, which things may be judged by due observation of circumstances, as, for example, that being convented before Domitian, the emperor, in the Preface of many, he presently vanished, and was seen a great way off, at Puteoli, I think, about the same time, that at the very time when Domitian was killed in Rome, he spake of it publicly, and of the manner of it at Ephesus, and so of many others, which seemed to me, as unto most, almost unquestionable. Well, perhaps he was in touch with the same demons that directed the killing. Or the greatest wonder to me is that such was his port and outward appearance, a sanctity and simplicity, that even Christians have thought reverently of him, and believe that he did his wonders by the power of God, or by secret philosophy and knowledge of nature, not revealed unto other men. So Justine Martyr, one of the ancient fathers of the Church, judged of him, as is well known. Most later philosophers that lived about Julian's time, and before that, as also the emperors themselves, many of them, were great magicians and necromancers, as may easily appear, partly by their own writings and partly by the history of those times. Now, there's a difference between worshiping the dead, or worshiping the matter of the dead, you could say, and connecting to the death energy like that, or otherwise, that are worshiping with the memory of the dead and that sort of thing. Because what's Christianity and the sacrament and stuff if it's not a necromantic ritual? Well, maybe not Christmas, but Easter definitely. I do very much wonder whether any man, being a scholar, and not strongly prepossessed, that doth not believe spirits, and etc., can say that he ever read the books of trials and confessions of witches and wizards, such, I mean, as have been written by learned and judicious men. Such as, for example, I account Nicholas Remigius in his Demolatria, ex judicis capitalibus 900 plus minus hominem, etc. Oh, I don't remember how to say my numbers in Latin, but grounded especially upon the confessions and condemnation of no less than 900 men and women in Lorraine within the compass of a few years, that he was a learned man, and I think nobody will deny that hath read him, and that he was no very credulous and superstitious man, although a papist. That also is most certain, and I have wondered at his liberty many times. I know not how it is now in those places, but what I have read and heard of the doings of witches and sorcerers in Geneva and Savoy in former times, I could say somewhat of myself, how my life was preserved there very strangely, but my witnesses are not, and I will not bring their credit in question, for such a business, I am of opinion that he should have maintained that there was no such thing as witches or spirits, and etc., but have been thought by most either man and brain sick, so frequent and visible were the effects to sober eyes, or a witch himself. For indeed it is ordinary enough that those that are so really are very willing, which deceiveth many, to be thought impostors, and there is good reason for it. I should sooner suspect him an impostor that doth profess himself, except it be by way of confession, as many have done, and is ambitious to be counted as a witch or sorcerer. I remember I saw a book some years ago, entitled, okay, different spelling, De Inconstans des Malvis Angus and Demons, printed at Paris in 1612. In quarto, another of the same author in size, entitled Le Incredulite de Miscreants du Führer Tillage, Paris, 1642. Strange stories are told there of a province of France, about that time or a little before, marvelously infested with witches and sorcerers, insomuch that people did not know one another in some one place in the streets, by reason of evil spirits appearing publicly in the shape of men, and that the proceedings of justice, which doth not happen often, were sometimes disturbed by them. I think the author himself was one that was sent to the place by the king with some authority, and to make report. But as I do not altogether trust my memory, having had but a sight of the books, it was at the bell in St. Paul's churchyard. So I beseech the reader not to rest upon this account that I give him upon my best remembrance, but to peruse the books himself. I am confident he may receive good satisfaction, being things that were done in a corner, but very publicly, and well attested as I remember. However, the reader must give me leave, though it be not to this purpose, lest my silence be drawn to the prejudice of the truth. To tell him that I met with one great falsehood there concerning my own father, of Bill M. Okay, which I have abundantly refuted. I don't BL and M. I don't remember what his father's name exactly was, and all others of that nature, when I was yet very young. But that, as I conceive, which in all these stories would most puzzle a rational man, is the signs which are set down by many, how witches may be known as teats, swimming upon the water, dry eyes, and the like, which things indeed have some ground of truth, being limited to particular times and places, but are not of general application, because an oddity of birth or some medical condition shouldn't be seen as a sign. And what, some people are fatter so they float better or something? That's horrible to think that anybody's, less overweight people are gonna, that's your criteria, or somebody who doesn't go in shock is in the same way when they're tortured. Ner cath pictus page 608, Tom, or Ton, 2, okay, Mr. Vossius had, therefore, reason to find fault with Springerus and Bodinus for making that a certain token of a witch, that she cannot weep. Pauses de Idolol 111, 180, 181. We also in the same place doth well accept against the trial of Guna Ikal us, as he calls it, commonly purgatio per aquam frigidum, condemned by many, but he had done well to have limited his exception, and to have showed how, when, and how far such observations may be used, for certainly they are not altogether to be neglected, but the reasons of such observations or marks that are given by some are so ridiculous that they would make a sober man, that hath not patience enough to ponder all things diligently, to suspect all the rest. So one tells us that when the cock croweth, the solemn meetings of witches, which opinion perchance may prove ancient enough, as we shall show elsewhere, are dissolved, and he thinks a reason may be because of the crowing of the cock in the gospel, when St. Peter denied Christ. Another tells us that witches being well beaten, trunco vitis, with a vine, stick, or club, maleficia, elata, severa, Flavilia, Savilina, Coguntur, have no more force, that who hurt are that the party bewitched recovereth, and the reason he thinks, and yet he, no ordinary man either, ex mysterio vini and vina et a dilect deo ex coias mysterio quotidii sacramentum sacro